Welcome back into the ASUG News studio. My name is Tom Whalegum, one of the editors for asugnews.com. Well, we've got a great panel session coming up here on SAP Virtualization. To my right is Bill Reid from EMC. Bill, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And to his right is Michael Leeper from Columbia, who's also a SAP Virtualization expert, if I could be so bold.
We'll take that today.
Thanks for coming,
No problem.
for coming, guys. I know you guys have been doing a lot of sessions on virtualization. And this is a topic that doesn't get a lot of airplay, and I think it's an important one. I think it's both as your company's journeys will show. So first, maybe we'll start, Bill. Could you talk about just EMC's kind of initial approach to virtualization and how it's kind of played out?
Sure. For EMC, it has really been a journey for us. It didn't start with our implementation of SAP. It really goes back even further than that. We started playing in the virtual sandboxes, if you will, back in really the 2003, 2004 timeframe. So we're now just about a decade worth of experience in the virtualization. So when it came time for our SAP project to begin in the spring of 2010, it wasn't a question of if we're going to virtualize, it's how soon we're going to go live on a virtual platform. So we take a lot of the lessons learned and the best practices that we've found in the data centers operating other mission critical assets and say, let's apply that to an SAP landscape and keep going forward, keep pushing the envelope.
Right. Michael, how about at Columbia?
Yeah, my story sounds really similar to Bill's. We started 2008, 2009 timeframe, really looking at our data center and determining kind of how we moved it forward. We needed to build out into a new production data center. How do we enable disaster recovery scenarios that we really felt we couldn't be ultimately successful doing it on a physical layer. So we really started to mature ourselves and force the migration into a virtualized landscape for all of the rest of our environments. So that when the time came that we decided to progress on the SAP stack, there really wasn't a choice for us. We were good at virtualizing our data center, good at virtualizing tier 1 applications, so it didn't feel like that big of a jump in late 2010 to virtualize SAP. Looking back, there probably were some risks we took there, but it's what we were good at doing, it's what we were good at running, it's how we felt we were going to be successful.
Yep. One of the perceptions, and maybe it was a misperception, was that maybe you shouldn't virtualize your production systems with SAP. That seems to have kind of gone away, but did you confront that as you started on your journeys, and how'd you deal with it?
I think the confrontation was probably non-existent for us. We had learned so much around virtualization of mission critical assets in the past. For us, SAP was new in our data centers. While we had some of the acquisitions through the years for the MC, had SAP, and a little bit of experience, there wasn't really a lot of virtualization of SAP. So for us, the new experience came with how does SAP operate in a virtual environment? And is it any different than some of the other experiences that we've had? Happy to say that the experiences we've had now 9 months post go live it's the same. Take advantage of it, reap the benefits, see the rewards, and continue to move forward.
How about, was there any hesitation?
No, not really at all.
Okay.
The classic entry into virtualization, starting in test dev, kind of sandboxing environments, it's great. You should probably start there, and we did too, just because as we were building out SAP, we didn't need production day one. We needed our test dev environments to start with. But what we learned in that process, we were able to leverage into the prod stack. And why would you spend the effort to do it only on half your environment?
That's right.
Right? The wins for us and the way we provide the platform to the company are in production, not so much in our test dev environments. It would not make sense for us to not virtualize production.
And just to add to that point, I think as every customer goes in there, we don't install production the first day of the project.
Right.
You need to understand your landscape, and we took the same approach. Build out a sandbox, build out a development environment, a QA environment, understand how the application performs in that space. Each customer is going to be a little bit unique. For us, it's a lot of batch and workload going on. We do have about 3,000 concurrent users in our landscape, so it's a pretty good sized landscape. Those aspects needed to be applied to what we were seeing in the QA tests that we were doing, the unit testing and the string testing that we were seeing, that we could later apply to a production-sized landscape.
Yeah, I mean, you totally learned how to run it by running it in your dev sites, and then you just match that into prod.
That's right.
So how big an environment, because we heard what EMC's was, how big is yours about today?
So our ECC database is right between 2.5 and 3 terabytes today.
Okay.
BW's about 3 times that, a little over 10 terabytes today.
Okay. So it sounds, I mean, you guys have clearly come out the other side. Were there some challenges along the way that you could give some advice to other people who are starting or going? You know, what would you tell them?
Yeah, the challenges are, I don't know if they were SAP specific challenges, right? Once we made the commitment to go virtual, you just need to learn how to manage the environment. And my SAP guys hate it when I say it. SAP is just another application in my environment. It has needs that it needs to run and operate, whether it's memory or computer configuration type settings, but they're not inherently any different than the needs that an Exchange or one of my PLM or applications need. You have to learn how to move into that environment and learn how to manage it, what types of resources it needs. But I don't think there were any surprises really per se, other than positive ones. Right? Our ability to grow the environment is so much faster than even the business is prepared to deal with right now. That we can take requests and not necessarily sit on them, but we can working through the system without having to scramble to meet a delivery date for the business. And those are the types of things that the virtual platform really allow us to do and provide to the business because we chose to run SAP on VMware.
One thing that I guess I would say we discovered in our journey, much to Mike's points about really nothing to be afraid of, just jump right in and it works. We did find that in the SAP, especially in the ABAP stacks, the memory management of SAP was a little bit unique. And as we were virtualizing, we were more than willing to over-provision on the CPU and compute side, the cores, and oversubscribe those. But on the memory side, we were much more conservative. Memory's cheap, let's protect the environments and protect the virtual hosts that we've got in that space. We ended up having to build out 9 SAP landscapes to support a 27-month program. So massive scale of landscapes that actually turned into almost 500 virtual hosts. So a lot of infrastructure and a lot of scale that we really did in about a 7 or 8 month period to get us to that production landscape, to get us that production go live in July. So as we were seeing things in the memory footprint, we said let's be protective of that and be conservative. I still look at that as an opportunity for roadmap to say there's an opportunity here to improve performance and optimization on the systems and think about what we can do more on the memory management side beyond that.
And those memory best practices are now part of the SAP best practice case white papers for virtualizing SAP as far as reserving memory.
Definitely.
So it sounds like SAP is, though it doesn't get as much play here as HANA or cloud or mobility, it's pretty rock solid for what you guys have seen.
It has been.
Yeah.
And they're behind it.
Yes.
Yep, for sure.
Is the rise of cloud computing and storing stuff offsite and it's up there, but it's still, there's a lot of on-premise still running today.
Yeah.
Is that overshadowing virtualization's benefits because people maybe aren't thinking about that first? They're more thinking about a cloud option?
I mean, I guess the way we think about from a cloud computing standpoint is it's not so much an on-prem or off-prem, it's the right location for the application. You've got things like federated identity, security, integrations are big. Each of those aspects needs to be applied to how you're making your decision criteria around staying on-prem, private cloud, or a hybrid model, or even a full public SaaS solution. Even in our core foundation, we looked at some opportunities and extended our SRM catalog to be a SaaS solution outside of our premise within the SAP landscape. So I think even with the traditional brick and mortar private cloud approach, there's still opportunities to take segments of SAP. And I think as you see the capabilities maturing and the bandwidth continuing to grow and the SLA is responding higher in these providers, you're going to see more and more opportunity. For us, we still have a very large integration footprint where there's a lot of data that needs to be latency sensitive. In other words, the SLA can't be tolerant to a 300 millisecond delay. That's something you might see in a cloud solution that's somewhere on the other side of the globe. So for us, we started with the private cloud on-prem to support the $20+ billion revenue stream that we have to think about.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and for us specifically, we have our on-prem private cloud solution. We believe we're world-class at running our private cloud. And as we look to public offerings or even a hybrid type model, what we're looking at is value propositions for the company and what types of requirements the business is bringing to me that I can't solve in my brick and mortar data centers. There are limitations to my physical four walls of any of my data centers that I can't necessarily overcome from bandwidth or security or just physical location. As we start talking about data latency issues, I can't pick my data center up and move it 2,000 miles away quite easily. I can leverage a public provider for some of those types of scenarios. So while the public cloud is kind of the hot, kind of sexy topic in a lot of scenarios, we don't look at it as somewhere we're trying to get. It's a tool we will use when we need it. And really, because we're not delaying the business's access to resources today. When they come to us and they need a capability, we can deploy that out of our on-prem cloud, where I think a lot of other customers are looking to the cloud as being their savior because they are struggling to deliver capabilities to their own internal business, so they'll go look elsewhere for them.
That's a great point. Are either of you using the landscape virtualization management product today?
We've got it up and running in a lab,
Okay.
and we're really targeting the LVM 2.0 capabilities for the copy clone capabilities and the PostScript cloning of the environments in that space. So we've been kicking it around for a while, and I think that's something that we're going to be actively pursuing as the product itself gets into its level 2 to support the EMC product sets behind the scenes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm actually in the same boat. Our platforms look very similar. We've had 1.0 up and running and looking at it. We like where it's going. Specifically, we're waiting on the 2.0 rev to pick up support for our EMC backend equipment.
Okay. So last question, then I'll let you guys go probably to a next session you guys have to do. What's the one piece of advice you would share to an ASUG member who bellied up next to a bar to you and just said, hey, tell me about SAP Virtualization.
Yeah.
Is it all good now? Can I do it?
Yeah, I think there's no question the results that we're seeing pretty much speak for themselves. We virtualized the landscape 100% for go live. And in our first quarter alone, first quarter close, we were running at 20-30% system utilization. Some people would look at that number as saying, hey, you over-provisioned the environment. I would agree with that comment only if that was the end of our journey. But in reality, we're just laying the footprint down for a journey for the next several years. And that capability that we've got in the virtual deployment to scale out landscape and add new users to the tune of 10 or 15 or 20,000 more users is there in what we've deployed in the foundation for today. So I'm very comfortable with the numbers that we're seeing. So don't be shy. Don't be afraid of the capabilities that virtualization gives you. Reap the benefits and the technology and ultimately the cost of ownership that brings you in the virtual space is what I would say.
Great.
And assuming you're coming to me not as a competitor of mine,
right.
I would be more than happy to explain to you that if you haven't started this journey yet, you're behind right now. To Bill's point, virtualizing your landscape is the start of a journey. And once you get to this hyper-virtual, 100% virtualized state, you start looking around for the next thing. And what's the next technology or the next change to my environment that can truly bring value back to my business? And they're thoughts that you can't have until you get to where we are today.
Right.
So stop thinking about it. Start figuring out how you're going to get there, because you're behind today, and the longer you wait, the further behind you're going to be.
Great. Great point. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming into the studio. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching ASUG News broadcast interviews. Check out asugnews.com for more interviews coming up from ASUG Annual Conference and Sapphire Now.